Growing your coaching practice with associates, a case study. We have a treat for you today. We actually do have a real case study of a coach who has taken on a fledgling organization and grown it into a pretty powerful coaching house, working with multiple associate coaches. And you're going to be able to, I think, hear at least pieces and parts of yourself, listener, in the story of our guest today. And yeah, the expansion of a private practice model, a solopreneurial model, into a group practice with associates. Now, one of the things that I have taught here at the Institute for more than 20 years is a course called The Successful Coach. And in it, I help persons just like you, listener, who are interested in transitioning into the field to set up and run successful private practices. That usually means solopreneurial practices. It's a made-up word just meaning it's you. You're the chief cook and bottle washer. You do everything from the marketing all the way down to cleaning the toilets. Everything is you. And frequently we have those solopreneurial coaches say, I think I have an opportunity here to take this thing and expand it. I want to scale it because I've got some real good opportunity, but I can't do it all myself. Have you ever had any of your coaches bring on associate coaches to expand their practice? The answer, of course, is very definitely yes. And that's what we're going to be exploring today. Kim, let our listeners know who is joining us.
Well, I'm as excited for this conversation as you, the listeners, are because this is my first time meeting Sylvia Laurence. Sylvia helps leaders land their dream jobs. As president of Trevero Coaching, she brings over 10,000 hours of coaching experience to Chick-fil-A operators, their teams and candidates competing for one of the most selective roles in franchising. She leads a team of 7 coaches. So Sylvia has led her team through both rewarding seasons and some hard ones, including her own journey from burnout to renewal. Most recently, her team celebrated a milestone, helping their 95th client become a Chick-fil-A operator. Congratulations, Sylvia. So outside of work, Sylvia is active in her local Down syndrome community and mom to 3 kiddos and lives with her husband, Trevor. So welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you so much. I'm really happy to be here.
I'm going to start with a short story of my own. And one of the reasons I'm so excited about today's topic is because early on when I was growing my very first coaching business, it was so successful. I decided I need associate coaches. And so I brought some on. And you know what? It didn't work for a variety of reasons, but I was unprepared for what I was doing and thought it would be just like having my own coaching business, but with some additional helpers. And so I'm really excited to learn from your learning in this conversation today. But before we dive in too deep, can you just tell us a little bit more about your background and what led you into coaching?
Sure. So, a little bit about me. You hit on the most important thing, which is I'm a mom of 3 kiddos aged 10 to 7 and married to a pastor. So, as a pastor's wife, we're pretty active in our local church. And what led me to coaching, it- I had no idea that this existed, that this was a career path that was even out there. So when I graduated college, I went into a bit of a corporate job, was thinking of starting a family, and actually was recruited to come to a local Chick-fil-A and do marketing. And this could really seem like a step backwards in someone's career, right? Here I am in a fast food restaurant, one store in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. But those 3 years that I served at that Chick-fil-A and as I started my family, were what opened the door for the path that I'm on now. And so at the end of that time, I thought I was going to go be a stay-at-home mom. And I left, and like 1 week later, I get someone reached out who was a colleague who was interested in starting a coaching company really geared towards Chick-fil-A. He had a lot of Chick-fil-A experience. He knew me, thought maybe there was some potential there. And I just said, okay, this sounds pretty incredible. I have no clue what this is, but let's go. So he and I came together as part of the resource, and we developed this new brand called Trevero that was really geared towards coaching and doing some consulting in the Chick-fil-A space. And my early years there, we'll probably get more into this, but my early years were tough because I just had this sense that I didn't know what I was doing. I wanted to be a good coach, but I had no formal education. So I was reading books, I was putting in the reps. I had the great fortune of working with a lot of clients and getting to practice, but I just knew like something's missing. There's more here in the coaching space. And so eventually, after a couple years, someone referred me to the PCCI, and I started my journey of education there, which was an incredible blessing. And I think one thing I'll speak to on the ICF approach and what I learned, with PCCI was letting the client carry some of the load and taking some of that pressure off myself to be able to show up and really just let them own the agenda and not always have to bring a script and a book, and a template into everything that we do. So that's been a really beautiful journey. And 3 years ago, I had the opportunity to step into the role of president of Trevero and have been leading the team of coaches ever since.
I love it. And Sylvia, thank you for being transparent enough to say that you didn't know what you were doing, because it does echo what Kim was saying. Like, how hard could this be? Oh, wow. That hard, really? And I think that's where a lot of our listeners are living as they're listening to this, because nearly every coach that we have trained, and thousands now all around the world, are in private practices just by themselves. Some with a great deal of training, some with very little, like yourself at the beginning, but in their own minds rehearsing a great awareness all the time. I don't know for sure what I'm doing. And that's just on the coaching front, let alone when they begin to think, gee, I've got clients coming in. It's more clients than I can handle. That sounds like opportunity. What about expanding and bringing some other coaches alongside of me? This idea of growing our practices through associates is very frequently an opportunity, and it's fraught with potential for success as well as failure. That's really what we're looking to explore here today. And thanks for just being that case example. Now, you have a unique situation in that you stepped into an organization that already existed working with Chick-fil-A operators. So I think we need to be kind of clear about that. Could you talk a little bit about Trevero as an entity and the associate model that it has?
Sure. So Trevero's been around for 9 years, and we have very closely partnered with the Chick-fil-A brand. And the way that works, we coach individual owner operators who are usually referred to us by other owner operators. And they're asking for coaching for themselves, executive coaching, and then leadership coaching for their teams and their leaders, up and coming leaders that they have in the business. And so that is very much what we focused on. We started with all W-2 full-time coaches. First, there were two of us, and then as we grew and brought on others, that was our model: was bring on the coach and invest up front, and then trust that the clients would come and we could fill that coach up. And that was a solid model for us until right on the other side of COVID, when things just started shifting a good bit. There was a lot of competition. We weren't the only ones kind of in that marketplace anymore. Also, what operators were willing to invest in and how much they were willing to invest in development shifted drastically on the back end of COVID. So there were just a whole lot of like economic factors that hit us, and where we realized we needed to change our model to stay viable, to stay healthy. And so we, going forward, we're primarily using contractors, but there are still a few of us coaches who are W-2. So we're a blend right now.
Hugely helpful. And I think that's important, listeners, for you to be aware of. We're using a case example here because it has very definitely struggled, as every model I've ever seen of associates in a coaching practice does struggle. But it has been able to be backed enough to where it could afford to make some mistakes, as it were, learn from those mistakes, and iterate to grow into a real powerhouse. And I think there are lots of takeaways that we can get from what you've been privileged to be able to do here through Trevero. Sylvia, you and I connected first through one of our PCCI students, a former Chick-fil-A operator who retired and started taking training, Bob Payne. And far as I know, he's still out there doing coaching. Bob put you onto us because of him being aware of what Trevero was doing and you stepping into that role. But you and I connected right about the time that I had to go on medical sabbatical for such a long period of time. So we didn't actually have that interview take place. Here we are now, 2.5 years later. And I think a lot has happened. Some of it kind of brutal, right? For you going through some of this awkward growth transition. One of the things I loved about the conversation that you and I had as we were prepping for today's interview was that I think you embody a mantra that I frequently spout here on the podcast, and that is that it's easier to steer a moving vehicle, which of course is tongue in cheek because you can't steer a vehicle that's not moving. But it's only when we get something moving that we realize, oh, wait a minute, I need to course correct here. Oh, wow, didn't see that curve up ahead until now. You stepped into something that was moving, and you've done a lot of course correcting over this last 2.5 years or so. Can you talk with us about some of the learning that's come only because something was already in motion?
Sure. So I stepped in and we already had associates, right? So my job was to keep these associates employed, right? We needed to have enough clients coming in that everyone could stay on payroll, and the business, excuse me, could be in a really healthy spot. And so early on, a great failure among many hilarious great failures was just a total lack of delegation. And a story that I'll share about this was we needed to drum up some business. We were coming up, it was spring, things were kind of dry in our pipeline. And so I came up with a spring promo, went into our MailChimp and said, I'm just going to send this out to all of our clients, sort of a discount code type thing if you sign up for new coaching. I drafted, I send it out all on my own. And mind you, I had like 6 team members around me, none of whom did I ask for help. Not a one. I do this and I accidentally somehow it comes back to me that I've sent this email 7 times to hundreds of people. It went out 7 times in a row. Still don't know how I did this, but this is why I shouldn't have been doing this. Not only that, but in my independence, still sort of operating like a solopreneur, even though I was not, I then decided to redact these emails. So I get into Outlook and they were all, so suddenly everyone couldn't open them, right? They get these suspicious messages like you can't read this. So I just like double heaped the mess on top. What is so funny to me about that, I was so mortified. Like I went home from work, I was so ashamed, I was embarrassed, like I'm not even a fit leader. I can't even do basic, tasks. Who am I? All because I did this in a hurry, right? To just try to do something. But ended up a couple people thought it was kind of funny when I sent my apology email the next day, and we actually got some business out of it. And I love this story because sometimes your failures, it's human. And the fact that I just owned up and said, whoops, like honest mistake, so sorry about the 7 emails. It did some good for us, and I think brought some connection. And so I've really had to learn to just shake things off. Like there's been so many things like that, and I have journals in this bookcase around me that are just full of I should quit. I'm not good enough. I should quit. I'm not good enough. And somehow, by God's grace, I've like hung in here and hung in there and kept on going. And I think I'm better for it. So
I love that story. And I assuming everybody listening does, because we all have a similar story, at least one, in many areas of our lives. And I hear I'm feeling frantic. I'm feeling pressure. I'm feeling like I need to step in and do something. And so we know our vision kind of narrows and our focus, and we're less creative, and we don't think about, other resources and other people. And so there we are. And then I love how you doubled down on your mistake and said, oh, I'm going to correct this mistake myself. And again, I resemble that remark. What's truly beautiful and what I'm hearing, Sylvia, is I wanted to quit. I wanted to step away. I was too ashamed. I don't know how I show up and own this. And yet, you did. And so, what is it? What mindset? What word from the Lord? What is it? Or what are some of the things that helped you keep going, even when maybe other people would have stepped back or quit?
I had a few key people in my life to encourage me. And it's really that has shifted, by the way, how I coach. I did not used to place such an emphasis on encouragement in my coaching with my clients, but it's so powerful. But just a couple people. And one of them was I hit a point in my leadership where I realized I need help. I'm coaching and I've got a team that I'm leading. And so I reached out to get my own coaching. And that wasn't something that the business could pay for at that time or would pay for. So it was an out-of-pocket investment. One of the best things that I did. Still work with this coach. It's Steve Cromer. I think he's actually been on this podcast a couple times. So he can't say enough about him, but to have someone who could be a sounding board, who I could be totally honest with, but who also brought a gracious presence of perspective to say, Sylvia, your mistakes don't make you a failure. Like it doesn't mean you need to quit. And that was really, really powerful for me to keep going.
I did not know that you had worked with Steve Cromer, and that just brings a big smile to my face. How perfect. Your husband is a pastor, has pastoral background. Steve's background, of course, is as a pastor. And you said just very gracious, what a gentle spirit and what a highly skilled coach. He is on our faculty here at the Institute. I wouldn't have had any idea, of course, because of confidentiality that you worked with him, but you got a good coach. And I would imagine that kind of encouragement from someone who definitely can say, hey, this is not only okay, it's normal. This is part of it. We learn by, like children learning how to walk, by falling down, and get back up, dust yourself off, and move forward. So I'm going to have you drill down for us now on some of the things that you did once you got into the leadership position there at Trevero. Trevero was a thing. It was an organization of coaches who were doing executive and leadership development coaching with not just Chick-fil-A operators, but any number of different people, Christian and non-Christian. And you began to hone in on the Chick-fil-A clientele specifically. Can you talk a little bit about why and what changed as you began to get more intentional with targeting that specific niche?
One of the things when I first stepped into leadership was that I thought I just needed to say yes to everything. Like I thought I didn't even have a choice. Okay, there's an opportunity. It's a completely different industry. They want leadership development. All right, let's figure it out. And not only that, but I thought that I had to be really involved in spearheading things to like pave the way for my team and make sure I didn't overburden the other coaches. So what did that mean? Well, the story of that is that I spent an entire year putting a whole lot of focus into completely different industry, thinking, oh, maybe this will turn into, something. Maybe this will be a case study and it will move us beyond into something else. But it just honestly kind of fizzled. It didn't go anywhere. It didn't move us forward. It took my focus off of where we were having success. We were having great success with Chick-fil-A. That's where the traction was. But I turned away because I was building this whole new program. So Chris, we actually were talking recently, and I threw this out as sort of a failure, and you said, no, like there's learning in this. And I think as I've reflected on that, the learning for me was it was a pretty valuable lesson in what I say yes to. And really, like I have choices. I need to think about the priorities of the business. I need to think about my limited time and where do I invest that time. And so that really helped me when we came away from that 1 year project. When I stepped away, I said, I'm all in on, I want a niche or a niche, however you want to pronounce that. And I said, let's go. And I started speaking to Chick-fil-A's, designing our branding and messaging for Chick-fil-A's, all of our coaches, making sure we were all trained and up to speed on all things that brand, right? Hospitality and what were some of those trends. So that was a very refreshing thing for me. And I don't know if I would have come back with that much passion towards our niche if I hadn't gone away from it for that whole year.
Mm. So, with my background in being a business coach and a marketing coach, I'm hearing such wisdom, right, in the niching narrowly to succeed widely. And it's so counterintuitive. And really, I think some of it is in the mix of what you've shared. So, I don't know if you can drill down any deeper, but in your previous example, of kind of not being the one to do everything and learning from your mistakes, you kept going even though you made mistakes. Now, in this particular example, you're saying, okay, I spent a year trying to drill into other industries and it didn't work. And instead of continuing to go on, you pulled back and reevaluated and went deeper. What should coaches be listening for as they evaluate this post-COVID world and the many opportunities out there and know when to push forward and when to drill down?
So there's two angles. One was that like my intuition and my gut and my spirit, there was just something off. I wasn't in alignment because I was doing something because I thought I should, not because it actually was the vision I wanted to go down. Secondly, once you add associates, there's this extra level of pressure of I'm running a business and I can't afford to just go down on a distraction and waste a lot of time and money. I feel the weight of my team and wanting to sort of provide for them and take care of them. And so that's very focusing. And I think a growth out of that has been setting much clearer goals. I used to set a lot of ambiguous goals at the start of the year for what I wanted Trevero to do. This year, we have one goal. And to be honest, it's just about coaching hours. And that could sound really black and white and harsh, but we're a business. This is what matters. This is what we're measuring. And if I had just used that one metric, I would have seen going off and this whole long leadership development launch wasn't actually going to get us to like that target. We didn't have that target at that time, but that the goals really do focus us once I've set those.
Yeah, that's so good. I really love that. And then thinking about this episode in particular, and this conversation being about associate coaches, again, changing direction or shifting back in a direction, you're not just deciding for yourself. You need to bring other people on board so that there is joint ownership of this decision and direction. So, can you share a little bit about how to do that if somebody's never really been in that position before?
So I can. Most of what I have to share is because I did it so wrong for my first at least year. Um, and, I think it's as simple as for me, just leaning back a little bit as a leader, I don't have to have all the answers, making space that at our team meetings, like there's room to share. In fact, we rotate leadership of our team meetings. I don't put that whole burden on myself anymore. So everyone has a chance to lead, and there's still a set, uh, process that we follow, but they get to control some of the things and how much time we spend on this, that, or the other. My coaches are sharp, and part of my journey has been learning to trust them and really believe they are as capable as they actually are, and that I don't have to protect them. I don't have to micromanage. Now I do oversee. We do review. That's something we might get into here at the end if I share some tips, like how we do feedback with one another, which I think is so important. We give each other feedback all the time, but I also have to trust and empower that they have great ideas, and I have to let them bring them. I have to let them own projects, own marketing, own different things that they want to own. So seeing that not as burdening them, but as empowering them to be part of the greater picture.
Very, very good, and that illustrated the point I think that Kim, you were asking about with your question there, that we learn because we're in motion, and sometimes, yeah, we do just press forward despite all the mistakes, and other times we completely reevaluate and stop something and go in a different direction. One of the mantras that I give to the people that take the class that I teach there at the Institute, the successful coach, is experiment, evaluate, iterate. And that's exactly what I'm hearing over and over in the stories that you're sharing, Sylvia, is you experiment. You try things and then you evaluate them. Well, did they get us where we were wanting to go, or did that blow up spectacularly, or something in between? But you experiment again and you evaluate, and you experiment and you evaluate. But each time that you experiment and evaluate, you iterate. You tweak something a little bit, you try from a different angle, or you scrap it all together and try something new, and you continue that. It's like a rinse and repeat kind of a model there of learning. I love that you're humbly just saying, I think I can tell you what I've learned, but it came mostly through my mistakes. Welcome to my experience of much of what real leadership development requires, right? It's being willing to be out there in the battle and getting knocked down and picking yourself back up, learning from the knockdowns, and being bold enough to admit them to your team, pull the team together. What else could we try? What did some of you see happening and I didn't? And just keep pressing forward. Can you take the marketing, sticking again with our theme today of adding associates into a practice and expanding it? Once you shifted Trevero's trajectory, really, from saying we are leadership and executive coaching development kind of work to now we're really zooming in on the Chick-fil-A owner, operator, or executive model specifically, what did that do to your marketing, to your messaging? What began to pay off for you in your efforts to get more and more people into the pipeline?
I used to post on LinkedIn kind of leadership development stuff. Look, I'm doing a training. Look, I'm with my team of coaches. Great, like professional stuff. Didn't really get a lot of traction. When I came away from that year where I was focused on this whole other program and refocused, I started speaking only to Chick-fil-A operators and future operators, those who want to become one, and their leaders. And it's been really powerful to see how engagement has just skyrocketed. Now, I did this. I started speaking to Chick-fil-A and I did one other thing, which is I had a colleague in marketing and she said, Sylvia, here's your recipe. On LinkedIn, you need to post 3 times a week. One time is something professional, give a tip, give a trick, give away something for free, help people, but build your credibility. Number 2, post something personal, connection, client win, or just personal post. And number 3 is your sales pitch, book a discovery call, something like that. So I started rolling with this around the same time I started speaking to Chick-fil-A specifically and really did see pretty good traction. Today, I now only make like a sales pitch 1 in every 10 LinkedIn posts at the most. I found I don't have to. People are going ahead and messaging. They see it, they see the credibility. And just a note while we're on this subject, LinkedIn's really interesting because there's a lot of lurkers. There's a lot of people who will never like, they will never comment, and you'll not know they're there. But I went into another city, Chick-fil-A, last week, completely different place I'd never been before. And someone approached me, a leader in the restaurant, and he said, I've been watching you on LinkedIn. I would have had no clue who he was, his name, but they're there. And so there's been a payoff, I think, from consistently posting and not just posting salesy things. It's really my more personal posts, my journey, my struggles. That's what people resonate with. Fun fact, since getting on LinkedIn and really carving out our niche, we have tripled the amount of sales calls that we get, and it's all coming through LinkedIn for us.
This is golden. I love when a marketing plan comes together. So thank you for the snapshot and actually the hard numbers. That's really very encouraging. Again, so thinking about the people who are listening today and that bigger question of bringing on associate coaches, can you just bottom line for us some of the key learnings that someone who's never done it but is thinking about doing it would want to know?
One of my favorite things, it's not my favorite, it's like required, is now when I'm talking to a coach, one of our first conversations is how are we going to break up? What's it going to look like one day, once upon a time, if you leave? And how do we want to handle that in a way that honors our clients? Because if a coach ever does leave, the clients pay the price, right? And so that getting to that level of candor, if you can have that conversation up front, the rest becomes a lot easier. So, yeah, we can talk about vision, we can talk about excitement, but we also just talk about let's be real, and here's going to be the impact. And please, can you give, here's what I would ask of you if you partner with us. So that's a part, is candor. Secondly, if any part of your gut instinct is concerned about bringing this person on, if you have any red flags, don't do it. Just move on. There are other people who want to be coaches. Come to the PCCI, you'll find them. There's great folks out there. So just honor the red flags in your spirit. And if you can get a second opinion, if you have anyone else on your team that can kind of screen them, do it, because we all have blind spots. Third, when I talk about associates, I would also say as soon as humanly possible, get admin support, even if it's 2 hours a week. Whatever you can afford, get it. My admin support is like a boost that turbocharges me and keeps me sane. And it's worth it. So think big picture. And I think the last thing I would just say is we all probably want a culture, as Christians, we want a good culture. We want to show care. We want to be loving to our team. And yes, do those things. Don't do it at the expense of the truth. There's been times when I just haven't given honest feedback, trying to be nice or hoping that it would work out, or maybe they'll figure it out on their own. And I've had to part ways with people. And I would have felt a whole lot better if I had just been very clear, and maybe it stung a little bit throughout the process. So just candor and honesty with love would be my closing word, that has been so valuable, and yet again that I learned the hard way.
And thank you for that. And I just want to underscore a couple of points that you made there. First of all, I love that you even used the phrase breaking up at the end of the relationship. When we decide to take the private practices that we have built as solopreneurs, and it has all of our personality and all of our passion, blood, sweat, and tears in it, and we decide, I'm going to bring on an associate, somebody else to hitch their wagon to my horse here, it's not dating for marriage. But it's kind of sort of in that same vein. You're bringing in another person right alongside of you whose personality, way of coaching, skill and expertise or lack thereof, right? Everything becomes an extension of you and your business. They are some of the voice and face now that the rest of the world sees out there. And so I love that you're emphasizing, kind of again, to use the dating metaphor, like if you can get another person's opinion, yeah, hello. You would certainly do that if you were dating somebody that you were considering possibly marrying. It's not as hard to break up an associate. Now, this is not a business partnership. You're not bringing him in as a 50-50 owner of your company, but as an associate with you, they're still going to be very, very connected. So your vetting process to decide, yes, this coach I want to bring in to help expand my brand out there in the marketplace, wherever you find yourself. That's a lot of wisdom there. Then, as you bring them in, ongoing communication and relationship with that person, really building a sense that the left hand is going to know what the right hand is doing. You're not just bringing them in, turning them loose, and kind of abdicating the responsibility to keep an eye on them. I wonder if you could speak a little bit to that, your onboarding process, and how do you stay connected to now 7 coaches that are associates in your practice. And then I want you to say just a little bit more too about the piece of bringing on an administrative assistant, somebody to, back to the story you told us about having messed around with MailChimp and sending out, that's not the stuff that we should be doing. That is not going to be our strong suit, and yet we have to do it. So bringing in somebody who's not another coach, but instead kind of does the stuff, the housekeeping stuff that needs to be done so that we can lean into the stuff that we really do best, the coaching, and now increasingly the leading of the team, the company. So yeah, can you speak to those two things, the vetting process, the ongoing relationship that you build with your associates, and the value you find in having somebody else take care of some of the behind the scenes nuts and bolts?
Yes, and first things first, you better believe our admin now handles MailChimp. I can't touch it. I don't send an email out. She proofread, thank the Lord for Paige. But, you know, when I think about onboarding, a lot of times, why does someone want to come and join Trevero? It's because they don't want to be on their own. They want a community. They want to learn, have some support, have existing infrastructure and systems. And so part of what we provide is just making sure there's community and different kinds of meetings where we can come together. The other thing that isn't just part of onboarding, but it's ongoing training, is just that every month, every coach has a call reviewed by a peer or myself, and including me. So we all submit calls, we all peer review. It's managed by our admin, by the way, so I don't have to worry, and she holds us accountable that it happens. But what's so beautiful about that is we get practice giving feedback. We get to practice being honest with each other and always saying areas where we can improve, but we also get to learn from one another because we all have different strengths, and there's that accountability, right? So that is just a beautiful practice that we started last year that I will probably never not do with the team. And I think it's a real value add that you don't get if you're on your own. You don't kind of have that rigorous ongoing feedback process. So that's a little bit of that. I've already hit on there how our admin helps with that, right? Setting that up, scheduling meetings. But I think one of the things I've had to be challenged on is just how much the admin can do. And so I'll ask her, if you ever have the great privilege of an admin, ask them what they might see that they could take off your plate. And she'll say, let me do your receipts. Let me do your invoices. Let me book your travel. And it's kind of like a take my hands off the wheel, but she almost has to pry them off. And so that's been a real gift. You want to make sure, though, that your admin is someone who's wired to find admin fulfilling and that they're detail oriented. So just check that. If you do assessments, we have an assessment we use, check that box. But apart from that, let them speak into maybe what else they can help you with.
I love this. So many golden tips. And I knew I was looking forward to this conversation. And unfortunately, our time is probably coming to a close, but I do want to highlight some of the things I'm taking away from our conversation today. I love the emphasis on candor and truth telling from beginning to end. From the moment you meet until the moment you part ways and go to different things, honesty will serve everybody best. As a coach, I really appreciated that kind of trust your gut. Sometimes we tend to discount things where we can't verbalize the reason why our instincts are saying, and that has never served me well to ignore that voice. So I appreciate you just honoring that truth is in all of us, especially when the Holy Spirit is also whispering to our spirits. So that's good. And yeah, not to minimize what you do, but as you talk, I think this is doable. These are skills we use in a distinct way when we bring on associates, but skills we already have. They're people skills, they're strategy skills, communication skills. All of it are things that, yeah, if the Lord is calling someone to build a bigger practice with associates, I hope they find this very encouraging because I think you've made it sound very doable. And I appreciate that, Sylvia.
It is doable. And you can go from whatever your cap is. That's how many you can coach. Associates, it's how you scale, right? It's how you grow something bigger and maybe even a little bit more enduring. So if you want to do it, you'll probably do a better job than I did. So go and do it.
That's beautiful. And I'm sure some of our listeners really want to connect with you with further questions or ways that they may be interested in working with you or for you. So how can they do that?
Yeah, look me up on LinkedIn. If you're on LinkedIn, just notice that Sylvia Laurence is spelled with an L-A-U, not an L-A-W. And if Chick-fil-A operators on your radar at all, let's definitely talk. But even if not, follow along and you're going to get to kind of see the behind the scenes of Chick-fil-A coaching. And finally, if you want to look up Trevero, it's simply trevero.com and you'll find us there.
Yeah, Trevero, a word that we're not familiar with. It's Trevero.com, and that probably is worth taking a peek at. Again, listeners, if you have the inkling within yourself to possibly expand, and or if you're beginning to have the market speak to you and say, you could expand beyond just what you're doing here as a solopreneur, I think there are a lot of things to be mined from this. This interview might be worth going back and listening to again. Maybe you put it on speed and a half, but just get those golden nuggets in there. Sylvia, you've been a real gold mine for us. I think you've given us a lot that you have learned through the School of Hard Knocks, and she is a very tough teacher because she gives the tests first, and then after the testing, then the lessons come. Oh, now I know what I should have known beforehand. But thank you. That'll save us at least many stumbles and stubbed toes, if not worse. Gang, if you are interested in learning more about a coach business mindset, if this has kind of stirred up a passion within you to maybe get more serious about what you're growing in your coaching practice, or certainly if you're at a place where you're looking at turning your little entrepreneurial business into a possible enterprise, let me encourage you to look into our course here at the Institute. It's simply called The Successful Coach. That is the only course that I still teach myself here at the Institute because we're so committed to ensuring that all these people that we've trained who are as highly skilled in coaching as Sylvia and her team are actually make a living coaching because the phone rings, they get clientele coming in. Their efforts at getting the word out actually pay off. You can find all the information you would need about that course, The Successful Coach, and all the rest of our courses at our website, and that is, of course, professionalchristiancoaching.com. Sylvia, thank you so much for joining us. Listener, until you tune in next time, you keep raising the standard of coaching and changing the world.
God's richest blessings to you.